if you've been following along with this series, then you've seen some of what we talked about, like getting your material together. And then last week we were talking some about pre-production. And now we're at the point where we are actually getting on set, which is a super fun and exciting time. This is the time that like we've been waiting for. And that's a lot of people. It's the reason that they get into the movies is because they want to be on set making the thing. And it is a very exciting time. It can also be very stressful. And if you're coming into it in a producer capacity, then you have a lot of responsibility. Obviously, you've been working on this all this time, like you know this. And we have a lot of classes already that specifically address directing and how you can communicate your vision, how you can work with actors, how you can work with crew. But also specifically from a producer standpoint, or if you're a producer director, just keep in mind that you are a leader on set. You are someone that people will look to for answers. Like they'll have questions or they'll have, when situations come up, you are going to be the person who's having to lead. And that's something that, people can take that and turn it into a really good thing or into a really bad thing. So I want you to be a good leader on your set. And I think that the best way to start off is just by having a strong leadership philosophy to begin with. And my philosophy of leadership is that the best leaders are not the ones who have the most control over their crew. The best leaders are the ones who can trust and support their crew so that each person can be the best they can be and can do the best job that they can do. To lead essentially is to serve. If you serve your crew, then they will serve the film. And that's what you want in the long run, right? You want everything to go back to making the movie itself better. We're not doing ego trips. We're having a kind, courteous time and working together as a team. And that starts with you as the producer, as the leader. And just keep that in mind for like as everything that we go through. And when you're on set, when things get stressful, just remember that you want, if in order to make it a good environment, a lot of that comes back to you. And before you even get on set, you can get started by making sure that you have everything planned out and that you're communicating well with people. So by this point, you will have done a lot of planning, right? You will have you will have, especially if you've been following along in this series, you should have things like your budget, your shot list, your schedule, things like that are all what you are going to use to plan your shoot. But make sure that you loop in various crew members too, so that they can also be on the same page with what's going on. And that's where the communication is really important. So when you've hired these people, you're hiring them because you trust them to carry out their jobs, to the best of their ability. You're hiring them to do jobs that you yourself might not be able to do or might not, have the capacity to do. And it's important for everyone to be on the same page. So open up those lines of communication early on. If your crew has questions, answer them. Even if it's like early on and somebody's asking you a really specific question, and even if the answer has to be, oh, well, that's not locked in yet, but we'll let you know as soon as we do, or this is subject to change, but right now this is what we're planning for it to be, some sort of response, even if it's just a fancy way of saying, I don't know yet, some sort of response is going to make your crew feel heard. And just keep in touch with them. And when you do have a solid answer, give them that solid answer. But don't be brushing people off early on, even if it's a bit too early for certain questions. You can also, when you have production meetings, you will probably have multiple production meetings with like your director of photography, your director, your assistant director, all of that before, early on in the planning process. You're going to be talking with these people to plan this stuff out. But when you're gearing up to shoot, I recommend also inviting the whole crew to a brief meeting where you can, even if it's, just a Zoom call or something, but just get everyone to have introductions, clear up any last minute confusion. If there are, quick questions that one crew member might have for another, you can get them connected. it's a great way to address various questions that you might think, even, you might think that you've covered everything, but if somebody still has a question, then this gives them a chance to sort of like say something. And even if nobody has questions, if you've communicated everything crystal clear, then now at least people can get to know each other before they, or get an idea of who's who before everyone's on set and jumping into work. um so I'm also going to say, before everyone gets on set, oh, look at that, I have a thumbs up. Okay. Before everyone gets on set, um, another really big thing that you can do to help with communication is sending out call sheets and sides, as early as you can. And when I say as early as you can, this will, a lot of times it'll be the day before, will be the earliest that you can. But um, Morgan has a class where she talks about call sheets and what they are and all the information that goes on them, and specifically how to read them. And that, I believe, is in our library already. But the call sheet essentially has some information for everyone about what your call time is, where you're going to be going, and just kind of what to be prepared for, what's on the schedule for that following shoot day. And um, the thing about call sheets is that when you're working on a project, when you're in process and in progress of filming, you can't really send out the call sheet until you finish the day, because you have to know, okay, here's how early we can start based on how late we finished the night before. But before day one of a shoot, you can you have some leeway where you can plan out, like, okay, on day one, where we're not dealing with turnaround time from the night before, this is what time everyone needs to be on set. And the sooner that you can let people know, the better. This also, nobody likes to stay up all night waiting for a call sheet. We want to know when we can set our alarms so that we know what time we have to get up in the morning. So we know what time we can go to sleep in order to get a full night's rest. And even if you don't have call sheets ready, like until the very last minute, if you at least just send out an email to the crew saying, hey, we think we're estimating that on day one, we're going to have like an 8 a.m. start time, and if that changes, then let everyone know as soon as it changes, but just try to keep giving people that information ahead of time. And I also mentioned sides, which are just little like half-page prints of all of the script pages for that day. That can be super helpful for a lot of crew members to just have a little thing that they can carry around in their pocket, that it's not, you don't have to carry around a full script. You don't have to carry around your phone or hope that you have service while you're trying to check and see what lines are coming up in this next scene. It's just a little printout that can be super helpful for a lot of crew members. So consider printing out sides for people. And you can just have those ready for them when they get on set. And then throughout the day, just check in with people. This was something where a producer who ran a very successful set that I was on recently, she told me later that she sort of keeps in mind as a mantra to ask people, do you need anything? Like, as a producer, she'll go up to crew members and say, do you need anything? Can I get you anything? And even if she's stressed, she tries to be calm. And I was like, yeah, I really like that, because that does make you feel seen as a crew member, to have the producer being like, are you doing okay? How are you holding up? And it makes you feel taken care of. And that can be something that really improves crew morale, to have somebody who's not yelling at you, but who's trying to see how they can help facilitate things. Then also, have your AD let people know what's coming up next. Even if it's already on the call sheet, have them, call it out or say it out. Have them say, okay, we're moving on. This is what we're setting up for. Can we, get so-and-so and so-and-so in here so that we can do a blocking, start blocking it. And then, like, have them call out, have them let people know what's going on. There are some ADs who really, take this to the next level and will like blow out your eardrums, be like, all right, here's what's next. And then there are some ADs who are really chill and who'll just come up to you and be like, hey, just so you know, we're moving on now. Whatever your style is, just make sure that the communication is there. Because that's what the people really need, is they need to know. So the next part that I'm going to go over is about making your day when you're running a set. And making your day refers to shooting everything that you need for the day in that day, staying on schedule. And this can be a tricky one for various reasons. But basically, I'm just going to go over a little pattern that I was taught in school, and that I think can be a very helpful little pattern for when you're shooting to help you stay on track. And that pattern is block, light, rehearse, shoot. And I know that this is simple. You've probably learned something similar, or you have your own workflow already. But just, start out with, when you're preparing for a scene, you're going to start out with blocking, which may start out with a private rehearsal between the director and the cast. But then you do need to have like a marking rehearsal, or you might call it a blocking rehearsal, where you share the blocking with the crew. And the cast goes through the scene where the crew can watch so that they can see what the blocking is. All right, welcome to the class. And so make sure that you have that rehearsal and that you let the crew watch so that they can mark it and so that they can plan ahead for what that blocking is going to be. And even if you're getting into the nitty-gritty creative bit of it without the crew there, just try to make sure that you do have at least one version of that marking rehearsal where the crew can watch. And then you can, once everyone has their marks, once everyone's seen the blocking, you can send the crew out, and send the cast out so that they can get their, hair, makeup, costumes, everything. And the crew can stand there and light the scene. And that'll be, getting everything, that'll be, I say lighting, but it also includes things like the set decorations, getting the props ready. If you're, getting the camera set up, getting the microphone set up, all of that technical stuff can happen during this sort of lighting period. Then when everyone's ready, which may take, a little bit of prodding from the AD to be like, okay, guys, let's wrap this up. Let's be ready for this in, 10 minutes and 5 minutes and 2 minutes. But when everyone's ready, then they come back and you do a final rehearsal. And this will be with the camera, with the cast, with all of the technical elements in place so that everyone can walk through it, especially if it's a complicated scene. And you don't have to have a ton of these rehearsals, but this is just a final thing to make sure that there aren't going to be any, last minute hiccups before you're actually rolling. And then once you've done that final rehearsal, then you shoot it, you get rolling. Sometimes people will also have what they call like a rolling rehearsal, which is where they roll on the rehearsal, which a rolling rehearsal is a take. So just keep that in mind if you're running short on time. Some people do skip the rehearsal, but that's not a rolling rehearsal. That's a take. So keeping that little flow of like, okay, we're blocking, we're lighting, we're rehearsing, we're shooting. We're blocking, we're lighting, we're rehearsing, we're shooting, will help the crew stay in sync with what's going on. Like if they know what the next step is going to be. And even if that's not the exact order of your workflow, even if you have a slightly different thing, or you have different names for what you're calling each step of this process, if you make sure that you keep that pattern going, then the crew will know, like, okay, you're like, now that we've done this part, the next step is this. And everyone can fall into that pattern more easily, and everyone can anticipate what's coming next. And it's really important for your crew to be able to anticipate what's coming next, because people might be a little bit spread out. You're even as good of a communicator as your AD might be. They might not be able to get to everyone all the time, or everyone might not be listening. There might be like someone who's in the bathroom or whatever, and they miss something important. And you want to be able to facilitate the crew being able to figure things out, even if they're not explicitly told everything. And the reason for that is that when you're on set, time is money. And it's been an expensive thing. You've budgeted for all this. You're like, movie money is not the same as real life money. Like you look at an amount of movie money that would be truly life-changing in your personal life, and you're like, oh, that's nothing for a film. And it's ridiculous. Like it's so warped. But when you're on set, it's like especially warped. And just consider this, that if you're shooting a short film with a $10,000 budget over the course of a weekend, that breaks down to about, over like 12-hour days, 60 minutes in an hour, that breaks down to about $7 per minute to be on set. So if you have to stop work for a 10-minute discussion about a shot, that's $70 that you could have saved if you had like worked these things out in post, or if you had a smoother communication workflow with people. So just think about that. The more planning that you have ahead of time, and the more that you can like keep things flowing, the more money you'll be able to save. by saving time. And all that being said, the goal is to be efficient. The goal is not to rush, because rushing is what leads to stress. It's what leads to accidents. It can lead to more delays because people are rushing and they're making mistakes. And also, for you as a producer, there will be times that you get behind schedule. And I know that you'll be thinking of these like dollar signs that are just like disappearing into the void. And um, even if that's making you feel frazzled, remember that if you are a frazzled producer, your crew and your cast and everyone is looking to you to set the tone. So if you're stressed and you are like actively letting people know that you're stressed, they're gonna freak out. Like, you have to be the one who's like, no, this is gonna be okay. Internally, you can be a full-on mess, but just remember that, like, externally, you have to be the one who's letting people know, like, we just gotta pick it up, but we're gonna be okay. you know like, this is still happening. This is still, we can still save this. We can still get this back on track, no matter how stressed you feel. Because if you start breaking down, then your crew is going to be like, well, this is ridiculous. And they're going to get stressed. And and if there are, various delays that happen, you can have your AD check in with the crew in a courteous way, but check in and see, like, okay, why is this taking longer than we anticipated? What's happening here that is, that is that's causing this delay, and what can we do to prevent that from happening again? And that's the thing, is it should be approached with like a problem solving mentality, not necessarily a you're messing up mentality. If there are delays, or if there are things that aren't what you anticipated they would be, you can make adjustments for it, rather than just like coming down harshly on people because it's not going the way that you thought it would. And also, you can you can save yourself some of the stress from the beginning by, from the start, scheduling in extra time for things to go wrong. Schedule in, you know depending on the size of your shoot. um, Hello, welcome. So depending on the size of your shoot, you can plan in things like contingency days, where if the weather is bad, or if you don't end up making your day every day, you have extra time to take care of these things, that you don't have to be stressed just because everything minute by minute isn't going according to schedule. So think about that. And especially if there's a complicated scene, like if there's going to be a stunt that needs extra rehearsal, or if you have a practical effect that's going to take a long time to reset in between takes, the day of, you can plan to have extra time to do that complicated scene. And that way you can, really, when you get to that point, you can do the best job that you can do on that complicated scene. Because probably the reason that it's complicated is that it's going to be really cool when it makes it into the final movie. So you want it to be something that you do right. And then if you don't end up needing it, then congratulations, you're ahead of schedule. There's like no downside to people, being ahead of schedule and having a little bit of extra time. And speaking of extra time, in a not so good way, for overtime, if you go past 12 hours on set, then you do need to provide another meal for people. And if you are paying your crew fair rates, then you need to offer them overtime pay too, which, that can be at different rates depending on how long it is. But make sure that people, if they're staying overtime, if they're staying beyond the time that you've asked them to be there, but also if it's something where, like, if it's a real thing where people are getting paid real rates, then make sure that you are compensating them for the extra time that they're there. And that overtime will cost more than like their regular rate would. So just be prepared for that, and schedule in a little bit of extra, room in your budget to cover things like overtime. And finally, when it comes to making your day, if it looks like you might finish early, just don't say the E word out loud. That's maybe a superstition, but you don't want to jinx it. Like, just be like, oh yeah, we're doing well on time. But also, if you start saying that people are going to get out early, then that can cause like a sort of mental thing of, then if you do end up getting out right on time, people are going to be like, well, I thought we were going to get out early. So in general, prepare your crew to be there for the longer amount of time. And then if they get out earlier, then like, yeah, you look like the good producer who's always letting people out early when they didn't expect it. So just consider that. So a lot of this, like I said, goes into managing people, which is not a skill that you super get taught like in film school. Or I mean, in general, a lot of people don't get taught these things when they're learning the technical aspects of something like filmmaking. Um, and I remember when when I made my first short film, like right as I was finishing college, and I had like all my friends who were shipping in and like helping make this thing happen for no money, and we were all like, making it work. I had written it, I was directing it, I was producing it, and at call time, I like, everyone was gathering, and I had this feeling of like, you know, things need to start and someone's about to tell us what to do. And then I had this thought of like, no, that someone is me. It's call time, and I'm, the director, the producer. I'm the reason that everyone's here. I called everyone. It's my movie. Like I'm the adult in the room. And it's my set, so it's up to me to take the lead and get people the instructions that they need to get to work. And then I was like, okay, that's what I'm gonna do now. And that's what I did. And we all ended up having like a good time and everything. We made the movie. It was cool. But I had to really mentally adjust to that responsibility that comes with being in charge. Because there's a difference between being someone who's organizing everything and someone who is leading everything. And it's, and it's just like a different sort of practice. So just keep that in mind. Like if you're the person in charge, then you are the leader, and that can take some getting used to, especially because people don't always react to you the same way when you are in a more authoritative position than when you're like all on the same level. um and I've sort of gone over this already, but your attitude sets the tone for everyone on set. So people are looking to you. And even if you are internally freaking out about some sort of disaster, make sure to like let people know, okay, we've got this. We're going to figure out a solution. Even if you don't know what it is yet, let people know, like, we're cool. We're cool. Just keep it cool. Act calm about it. Because if you are a chaotic producer, then you are going to have a chaotic crew. And if you are a rude, argumentative producer, then you're going to have a rude and argumentative crew. Also, on the flip side, joking around and, having fun can really be a good thing and keep things light between setups. But you also just have to remember to keep an eye on the time and not be distracting from the work. Make sure that like, okay, if you are having that more fun, laid back kind of set, that you do still have a boundary of like, okay, but this is when it's time to be serious and actually, get to work. And at some point on set, you will often reach a point where there's some sort of division between the leadership, the above the line crew and the below the line crew. There'll be at some point there always will be, even if it's really subtle, sort of us versus them mentality of there are people who are working for someone else or for someone else's vision, and that's just something that happens, but it doesn't have to be a conflict, right? And so when you are in that leadership position and people are answering to you, or answering to someone who's answering to you, then you can really do a lot to empower those people. Like when you have to make decisions, you can ask them for their opinions. You can also hold people accountable for things and delegate responsibilities, so things like that, like let people know that you are trusting them with the job that they're doing, and let people know when they're doing good work or if they're improving, like that can go that way. Let people know when what they're doing is right and that you are happy with the work that they're doing. There will also be times that you'll get blamed for circumstances that are completely outside of your control, whether it's like overtly to your face or more likely behind your back. Like, like it could, rain on your shoot day that you're supposed to be outside, even though all the weather reports said that it would be sunny and clear. And still the crew is going to be like, they shouldn't have scheduled this for a rainy day. You know, like there are things that are going to be outside of your control, and there are going to be things that you will get blamed for. Um, and this is a time really to try and come up with solutions and offer support rather than focusing on blame or excuses. Um, yeah, like getting hail one time in Miami, so random. Like things like that where like there I was once on a shoot where the city was planning construction nearby, and they had specifically planned this really weird schedule to work around the city's construction schedule. And then like halfway through the shoot, the city was like, okay, actually we're changing our construction schedule. And so things like that where there will be things that are completely out of your control. And you know, and we can you can either spend a lot of time being like, no, 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 I really didn't see this coming. Or you can say, you know, I tried to plan around this, but this is what we're going to do now. Um, and again, like coming up with solutions and offering support is better than focusing on blame and excuses. And also when there are things like if crew members make mistakes, or if they are, you know, not doing things right or not treating each other properly, then you can address that, but try to address it with them privately first. Because if you publicly call out somebody in front of the whole set, not only will it kind of humiliate them, it'll set a bad tone for everybody, but also it'll villainize you, you know, because then suddenly you are that mean producer who called out that person over, you know, whatever mistake. And then you don't want your crew to be like teaming up against you, you know. And then if your crew comes to you for help with an issue, then listen to them and consider their suggestions and take them seriously. That goes a long way to making them feel listened to, and making them feel like they are part of your team instead of they're their own team that like has to jump through hoops to please you. Um, and what this really comes down to is that, so as a crew member, I love being on set. As a person, I love being on set. It's where I feel like I belong the most. It's where I feel strong and capable and knowledgeable, even when it's boring, even when there's downtime, even when, you know, somebody's taking 4 hours to light a scene. um, I'm not bored, you know. I'm still struck by the wonders of making a movie. I'm, you know, I'm like, wow, I can't believe I get to do this. And I've been on sets where all of that really changed. And every day, instead of being like, wow, I can't believe I get to do this, I'm like, at least I'm getting paid to do this. And that's a big shift. And that doesn't come from, you know, internally me deciding that I don't like making movies anymore. That comes from being on a toxic set that makes me stop caring about the project. And this can happen to any crew member. um, from the beginning, if you're a producer, you know, no one really cares about your movie quite as much as you do. You are the passion behind it. You are the driving force behind this movie. And you still want your crew to care about the project, at least somewhat, when they come on, right? Because that's why we do this, because we like making movies. And you don't want to be the reason that the crew loses their spark. Um, you know, there will be days when everyone is tired and hungry or hot or cold, or they're like downtrodden, or it's, you know, raining and hailing again. And like, there's, you know, like there can be a lot of days where things are difficult, and that's part of the process. But, you know, and on days like that, people might not bring their best work. But if they stop caring altogether, then they're not going to bring their best work, even on the days where everything is going right. They will have already checked out. And that's what you absolutely do not want for your movie, is you don't want a movie where people have stopped caring, because the art will suffer for it. You have a bunch of creative people who came together because they love doing this. And so we should be able to feel that love all the way through to the final process. Yeah, like Raven says, once they stop caring, you can't get it back. um like once they stop caring, it is just at that point about the money. And if you start asking people like, hey, can you like stay a little extra, or do you want to like do this as a favor or whatever, they're gonna say no. They're gonna be like, no, I'm going home. I don't want to be here anymore. And so just keep that in mind, that you want it to be the kind of environment that people still care about the art. And um there can be real challenges with that too, because like I said, there are days that it's just a lot of work, and that people get tired, and that, like, they get hot or cold or hungry, and there will be times that people are not at their best, even if they are still here and trying to give it 100%. And that's just part of the nature of the work. That's part of the nature of any work. um and Sometimes there'll be times that there are conflicts on set. And I'm just going to tell like a quick little story, which is that I was once on a set. It was well past midnight. It was like hour a million of, a 12-hour day. And someone from the props department brought the wrong prop to set. And the director pretty sharply told them that it was the wrong thing. And then the props person argued back. And the whole thing, within like 20 seconds, devolved into both of them shouting and cussing at each other. And it ended with this like really big flourish when the director very dramatically fired them in front of everyone on set. They left, they like slammed the door behind them, and then the whole crew was just like silent for a few seconds. And we're like, that really just happened. We all just saw that happen. That happened like in the middle of the room, in front of everyone. And all of us are there. And it was, like super, super late at night. And it was, you know, it was pretty dramatic, but it was also, I think, kind of a turning point on that set. And the moral of the story is that there's, that is a way to handle conflict, is to have something that is big and dramatic and ends with like, laying down the law, you're fired, get out. But after witnessing it, like the rest of the crew, we were all like, okay, I kind of want to go home. I don't want to be here anymore. Like, it's a hard thing, first of all, for people to witness that, but also to know that, like, if I make a simple mistake, like bringing the wrong prop, I could end up going home. Like, I could get fired like that in front of everyone too. Um, and so all of that is to say there's a time and place for correction. You can pull someone aside to discuss an issue instead of calling them out in front of everyone, like the wrong prop thing. Just be like, pull them aside and say, hey, I thought that we were supposed to have this one. This is what it says in the script. Would you be able to just run back and bring back the right one? And if the problem is that they're making mistakes, something like bringing the wrong prop can be an honest mistake. Then ask if there's something that you can do to support them. Like, it seems like we're having issues bringing the right props today. Do you need a PA to help you stay organized for the rest of the day or for the rest of the shoot, or to help keep things going? Just see what you can do to support them to prevent the mistake from happening again, rather than coming down harshly about the fact that a mistake was made. And then also, if the problem is their behavior, so like this was also, they brought the wrong prop, that was an honest mistake, but then they did argue back and start cussing and things like that when they were reprimanded for it. And in a situation like that, where there's a behavioral issue, then stand your ground, but most importantly, stay calm. Because if you start shouting and cussing back, then you guys both look extremely immature, right? And you lose your authority when you lose your temper. If the director had just been really calm while this props person was screaming at them, and just said, okay, pack your things and go, then that would have been, they like, that would have set a different tone. Everyone still would have been like, oh wow, that was really intense, but the director would have maintained a lot more of that presence and that authority by staying calm. And again, with the behavior, sometimes you will have things like code of conduct violations. You will have, people who are being abusive or harassive or discriminatory on set. I'm not saying you will, but I'm saying you could. And if that kind of thing is happening over a course of time, not like one big dramatic incident, but like little things here and there, document what's going on. When other crew members come to you and say, hey, this person is doing this thing, then like make sure to keep track of what's going on. And then if it comes to a point where you do have to like confront this person or potentially fire them, if you have the evidence and you have like specific documentation of things that have happened, then that'll give you strength. Even if you don't have to like throw it in their face or anything like that, you can just say like, hey, you know, you violated our code of conduct, you know, you have to go. But like, it's still a difficult conversation, and having the facts on your side is going to give you strength, even if you don't have to use them. And you know, depending on the situation, sometimes you might give the person a warning, sometimes you won't. Sometimes it'll be like whatever they've done, it might be enough that you just say like, okay, you're not invited back to set. And if you do fire someone, pay them for the days of work that they've done already, and then, you know, cancel the rest of their contract. Make sure that when you're writing these contracts in the beginning, that you have the code of conduct in there and say like, if you violate this code of conduct, then you can be asked to leave. But they have already showed up and done work, so, you know, just cover your bases, pay them for the work that they have already done. And then also, if they have been behaving this way, there are probably people on set who have been victims of their behavior. So talk to the people who came to you and make sure that they feel heard, and see what you can do to support them. Make sure that they're okay. Like, make sure that they're in a position where they still feel comfortable to keep working, and where they feel comfortable being a part of the group now that this other person's behavior has been addressed. And I've noticed that it only takes one bully on set to ruin the experience for everyone. So, you know, if there is one bully, like, there, you know, sometimes it's time for them to go, or time for them to change their behavior. And sometimes they just need to be called out on it. Sometimes someone just needs to go to them and say, hey, the way that you're acting about these things is not right, and we're not going to tolerate it. And if it keeps up, then you're going to be asked to go. So yeah, just remember, it like one bad apple, one bully will ruin the set for everyone. And if you have like conflicts that are between particular actors and crew members, like if you have conflicts or arguments between specific people but that you're not involved in, if it's starting to affect the work as a whole, then it does involve you. So just find out if the conflict is based on something that can be fixed on set, or if it stems from a larger, you know, interpersonal issue. So if it's something where like there are, you know, where people are like stepping on each other's toes between departments, or where, you know, there's a disagreement about how a shot should be done or something like that, you know, find out what the base of the issue is, and if it's something that like, can you put a system into place to make this easier for people and reduce the conflict. Or if it's like a larger interpersonal issue, if someone's like, you know, got separate beef with someone else because of something that happened 2 years ago, there's not a lot that you can do about that. But you can remind them that this is a professional workplace and that there's not room for that. Like, there's a certain standard of behavior that's expected, and that is respect and courtesy. And you know, if you can do something that solves the problem, like if, you know, if it is something that is directly related to the work, and you can, you know, change a workflow, or you know, set up a system or something, if you can do something to address the issue there, then make the effort to do that and let them know, hey, we're working on this. Can you work with me? I'll work with you. We can all work together to work this out. And then also, if it's just that people are exhausted at the end of a long day and tempers are flaring, like, let people know, take 5, cool off. And yes, I know that like taking 5 minutes to sit there and cool off is $35 in set dollars, but trust me, this time it's worth it, right? Because then you don't have an argument that's taking up 5 minutes. You have people who can cool off, collect their heads, and then get back to work to finish the day, and then get home and get some rest so that they're refreshed next time and not arguing in the morning. And there will be times that things really go wrong. It might not happen on every set, but there's the whole like Murphy's Law thing of like, oh, if something can go wrong, it will go wrong. And I feel like it's not always true, but there will be a lot of times that things you don't never see coming will go really wrong. And I just want to say, there is always an answer if you're willing to take the time to find it and open your mind a little bit. It will not necessarily be something that you like. It will not be necessarily fun, but there is always an answer. Like, you don't have to like halt everything. We're all falling apart and whatnot. because of something going wrong. There may be times that you need to take a break and address something, but there's nothing that's so bad that like a movie is completely irrecoverable. Um, and when things go wrong, just like take a deep breath, because otherwise you're going to start going into this fight or flight mode. And that's for survival. That's not for making movies, right? It's just a movie. Even if it's something that you have poured so much time and money and effort and like blood, sweat, and tears into, it is just a movie. And it's something that is a creative process. It's a collaborative effort. And it's something that, you know, that you can make compromises on. And you just have to take a deep breath and stay calm and think about what those compromises might be and how to solve those problems. And when you're solving problems, think outside the box or think outside the shot list. Your shot list, first of all, is not written in stone. So be open to compromises or making changes. If you have to like combine shots or scenes, or if you have to separate things out, or if you like an actor suddenly isn't able to show up, then like can you get across the flavor of the story without them for the rest of the shoot? Like can you give their lines to somebody else, or can you, if you lose a location, can you move it to somewhere else? Whatever the situation might be, what are the compromises that you can make that still serve the story? And also keep in mind, it's a movie. There are so many ways to cheat things. And even if like whatever it is, whatever the issue is, there's a lot that you can cheat. And it might not be like that you get that really cool effect that you were hoping for. It might not be that you get that really cool shot that you wanted, but there are ways that you can still cheat it and still get the story told. So think about ways that you can cheat, whether it's like on set, cheating different shots and framing things, whether it's cheating things with sound design and like letting people know with sound cues what's going on, even if you like didn't get that shot, or whether it's, in the edit, the way that you cut it together. There was once, like when I was in school, there was an editing project that I did, and the files were missing for like the most important scene, or not the most important scene, but it was like a major turning point scene in the story. And I ended up like just doing a completely different cut, like recutting the whole thing so that it would still make sense without that scene. There are things that you can do, and like, it didn't turn out the way that that movie was originally intended to be, but it turned out with a story. Like it turned out as a thing that wasn't bad. So just think about that. Also, for if you have like a continuity error, can that be fixed with an additional shot or a scene that explains the sudden change? There was like one of our favorite bits in Bernard that Raven and I, the movie that Raven and I made, Bernard Gets Famous. There was a continuity error that we realized was happening during filming, and Raven ended up like writing a whole new, just like a little transition scene, to sort of bridge that gap and explain why this character's costume changed. And it ended up being so funny, and it was some of my favorite jokes. A couple of my favorite jokes in the movie are just in this little transition scene, and it ended up giving a lot of information about the character. It ended up just really carrying the narrative forward. There are things like that that you can do. Really, like you can make changes to connect things, and sometimes it'll be even better than what you'd originally planned out. Yeah. Yeah, no, like it was a really good, it was a good moment. And so that continuity error ended up being actually a gift in disguise, because then it, like, when Raven put on her thinking cap and got really creative about what she could do to bridge that gap, we got some really really fun stuff out of it. And also, don't be afraid to ask for help. You hired your crew for a reason, because they know how to do their jobs and they have ideas for how to solve problems. They know the possibilities for what can be done technically. Um, and and also there are times that, a lot of times I work in the sound department, and there are a lot of times that I'll be on set and I'll just be like watching everyone and observing while I'm waiting for my next thing to happen. Because everyone will have periods of downtime on set. That's just part of the flow, the ebb and flow of the day. You know, when one group of people is working, another group will be taking a little break, and then when they're working, they're taking a break. But there will be times where I'm just kind of watching and listening, and I love to listen when people are solving problems and when people are figuring things out. And I love seeing how these things get solved, because it's just, when I go onto a set that I'm running, then I have more ideas about how to solve things. And I'll find myself on other people's sets and be like, hey, I know it's not my department, but what if you tried this, that, or the other thing? And it's literally just something that I've seen someone else do somewhere else. And I try to be respectful, and, you know, I'm not going to be stepping on people's toes, but, you know, just saying like, hey, if you're looking, like, if I notice that you're having an issue and you are, you know, looking for suggestions, then I've witnessed a lot of problems and a lot of problem solving on indie sets. And so if it worked for another production, then why can't it work here? And so I would encourage you as a producer, is if you're having a slight, you know, issue, or you're like, I'm not sure how we should like do this thing, I'm not sure what the best way would be, then, you know, maybe don't like full on open the floor to everyone, but like be open to suggestions, or ask people that you know these things for help. Ask them what their ideas are, or you could even ask them like, okay, should we do this or this? You know, like asking for input will end up getting you a better result, because, you know, even if it's not and I'm not saying that like you should invite everyone to be giving a bunch of input on departments that are not their department all the time, because that is like, you know, that can get really iffy. But if you have people that you know what they're doing, then ask them for advice on it sometimes, especially if it's something technical that's not your wheelhouse. And finally, I'm going to talk some about safety, because that's a really important part of being on set that I think can really get glossed over. It can get forgotten at times. And I talked some about in my pre-production thing about preparing to have a safe set by having, you know, precautions in place. Um, but when you are on set, what is that? I'm not even making a thumbs up. Sorry about that. But when you are, you know, when you are on set, it's important to keep your people safe and taken care of. So, first of all, encourage the crew to come to you with any safety concerns before they become emergencies. Just like open up that door, be open to, you know, concerns and suggestions and things like that. Have those open lines of communication with people. And if they bring you a concern, even if it's something that you're like, well, that'll like never happen, you know, why are you worried about this? There's a reason that they're concerned about it. So take them seriously. Because you'd rather prevent these things than deal with it after it's become an emergency. Um, and also have a safety meeting before you start a scene that has any potential hazards. So if you have things like stunts, you know, that have a safety meeting, talk about the stunt, talk about what's going to happen. If, you know, if you have your stunt coordinator, the actors who are involved, but also let the rest of the crew know this is what's going to be going on and this is how we got to handle it. This also goes for things like intimate scenes, or if you have car scenes or you're like shooting near active roadways. If you have any pyrotechnics or fire, if you have prop weapons. This is actually a really, really big one. Like always have a safety meeting if there's a prop weapon, even if it's like the dumbest looking fake gun you've ever seen in your life. You know, have a little safety meeting, invite the crew to take a look, invite them to look at the weapon and verify that it is a prop. Verify that if it's a gun that it does not shoot, verify that if it's a blade, it's not sharp. You know, let the crew verify for themselves, because this is something that, you know, has taken people's lives on set, is by having weapons that, you know, should have been not loaded or should have been loaded with blanks, or things like that. Or even there was a case where a gun was loaded with blanks, but it wasn't cleaned properly and there was like shrapnel in it, and somebody died on set because of it. And these are things that like nobody should have to die in the line of work, especially over a prop weapon. I am a sound designer, okay? I know for a fact that you can get the sounds of guns going off and use a prop. Like this, you don't have to be firing guns at all on set. Um, there's, and if you are going to have that prop weapon, let people check it, like have the safety meeting, demonstrate this is a prop weapon, it does not fire, it is not loaded, it is not, let people know what your safety precautions are, but also that they are safe, and give them the chance to verify that. And a safety meeting will also just, help everyone stay on their toes when there is something complicated going on. And then if an accident or injury does happen on set, pause the work immediately and just start delegating some tasks. So if someone is injured, then have someone call the set medic or bring in a first aid kit. Whoever's nearby, just be like, hey, can you get them? Or if you're on walkie, that can be really helpful. Yeah, like call them on your walkie. Have someone that the injured person trusts stand by them for a minute and like ask, and have their friend, their set buddy, who you'll probably figure out who people's friends are after a couple of days on set. Have someone that you can see them like hanging out with come over and have their friend ask them too, like, are you okay? Like, is this really it? Because a crew member might be nervous to tell the producer, like, I don't feel like I can just pop up again, but they might be more honest with their friend about like, no, actually I did like injure myself. If they do need to go to urgent care or to the emergency room, have another crew member call ahead or call the ambulance. You should on your call sheet have listed where the nearest hospital is, and you have that for a reason in case things like this happen. So just if something happens, pause the work. Like, you're not gonna like, this is something that you do pause the work for because somebody has been injured, and you have to address that as soon as possible and as clearly as possible. And then if a crew member like falls or faints or something like that, and then they get up and they're like, oh, I'm fine, don't believe them quite yet. I say this also like partly as a producer who's, dealt with crew members who had issues with like exhaustion or low blood sugar, things like that, but also as a crew member who has like fallen and things like that before and been like, no, I'm fine, I can power through, when like I should not have just powered through. If someone falls or faints or something and they say that they're fine, have them take a few minutes, check for injury, check for dizziness, bring over some water, some snacks, some ice packs, whatever it is that they might need. See if you can address, why they fell, if it was something that they like slipped on something, tripped on a prop or something, whatever it might be. Or if it's something where it's like, oh, they haven't had enough water today and we've been shooting in the sun for 12 hours, whatever it's going to be, make sure that you address that issue. But like, sit them down while they do it. Let them know that it's okay if they need to take a little breather. And in general, there's this pretty old-fashioned idea that crew members shouldn't be sitting down on sets. And I think that is completely ridiculous, because if crew members are working for 14-hour days, a lot of them are lifting and carrying heavy materials, so a lot of that, then they should have the right to sit down when they have a few minutes between setups. And that kind of exhaustion, especially if you're on a shoot that goes days and days and days on end, that's not good for people. And if you have crew that are getting clumsy, then that will end up impacting your bottom line more than having them stand around when they don't have something to do, right? Because there's this idea that like, if somebody's not standing, then they're not working and you're not getting your maximum value for their time and whatnot. But the truth is, on a lot of film sets, people do have downtime while someone else is working on something else. And just because somebody takes that downtime to rest doesn't mean that they're not giving 100% when they have 100% to give. And let's see. And so next up, as far as safety, if there's someone who's, and I gotta wrap this up real quick, but if one person is making another feel unsafe on set, then pull them aside, address the behavior. Sometimes it might be, threatening behavior, like how we talked about earlier, where it's like harassment or something, and deal with that, as I talked about earlier, as a code of conduct violation. But there will also be a lot of unsafe, dumb behavior that happens on set, like, playing with weapon props or climbing to the top rung of a super tall ladder without a spotter, or things that are just like dumb ideas, or ideas are like quick, or, like, oh, we'll just run and do this thing real quick. We'll climb this tall thing and, put this up there without a safety net, and then we'll jump back down and we'll all be fine. And it's like, well, that's how people fall. If you see people that are doing something dumb, then, you know, give them a strong reprimand and explain why this thing is unsafe. And, you know, let them know that they are creating a hazard. And if the behavior continues, then it may be time for them to go. Like if they're not listening and they're continuing to create hazards, then let them know, like, this is a professional workspace. We have to adhere to these standards. So I'm just going to wrap this all up. But basically, you can't have made it this far without some planning. You have a team backing you up. Trust them, take care of them. That's it. And there will be times that you will be wrong. And there will be times that you're going to make mistakes, that you're going to make the wrong call and things like that. But it's okay, because every consequence is a lesson that you learn. And every day on set is another chance to practice making the right decisions, right? And so if you start off with a strong philosophy that to lead is to serve, and you know that you are here to take care of your people and lead your people, then that will carry you through, even if you make the wrong decision sometimes. So that's that for today's lesson. Thank you guys so much for joining in. I hope that you took away some good stuff from it. If you have questions about, you know, anything production related, feel free to send me a DM. Feel free to ask me about it. If you want to see classes that go more in depth about certain aspects of production or about audio, let me know. We're happy to make that happen for you. And in the meantime, have a good afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, guys.